Hi everybody! In this video we are going to focus on text, animation presets, and loading fonts in After Effects. So for this tutorial, you are going to need After Effects, which you've been using, and we're also going to use Bridge to preview the preset text animations in After Effects. So if you don't have Adobe Bridge downloaded to your applications yet, go ahead and do that. Go ahead and go to adobe.com, sign in, download Bridge, install it, and have that ready to go for this tutorial. I don't really use Bridge that often. Some people use it all the time, but we will use it for this, and it will at least introduce you to Bridge if you've never used it before. It's kind of, well, it's a bridge between applications in a lot of ways. But again, I'm not really an expert in Bridge, but I do use it for viewing text animation presets. So that's what we'll use it for today. All right, so go ahead and launch Adobe After Effects. You don't have any files to download for the tutorial series this week because you're going to be finding your own stuff to download and use. All right, so in After Effects, we'll go ahead and just start a new project, and I would just go ahead and start a new comp. You know my usual recipe, 1920 by 1080 at 24 frames, and this first comp we'll just put at 5 seconds for now, and you can do whatever you want. You could do 10 seconds if you wanted. It doesn't really matter. So what we're going to focus on in this video is text. And so you may have already figured this out. It's definitely not rocket science, but your text tool is right here. By the way, you can see that I have this transparency grid that you commonly see in Adobe applications. This means that wherever you see this grid, it's transparent. If you ever want to toggle that on and off, you can toggle the transparency grid right here, and it will toggle it to black. Sometimes, depending on what you're doing, it's easier to see what's going on if you have a black background. And then you could always add in a new solid layer as well. So if I go get my text tool, for example, here, and I'm just going to click and drag it across, and I'm going to say this is my text tool. Isn't it awesome? Question mark. So if I am looking at this, I can't see the type that I've typed on here at all. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle the transparency grid, and you can see my typos here. And I've got two different fonts going on for some reason also. So I don't know what that's all about. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and put my resolution to full for this tutorial, but you certainly don't have to. Okay, so you've just made a text. You've got a text layer down here ready to go. Obviously, the text layer is going to be called whatever your text is, which is helpful. So I'm going to go in here and choose everything, and what you need is you should have your paragraph and character windows pop up automatically over here. If you don't, when you apply the text tool, you can find your character and paragraph windows over here. Let me see. I feel like text. Oh no, here's paragraph, and then we do have character up here. Sometimes there's a sub-filled, like maybe I'm thinking of a different application. Adobe color themes. Yeah, I guess I'm not sure what I'm talking about. But anyways, character and paragraph windows are there if those don't come up for you. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here and look at some different fonts that I have. And, you know, this is just like your typical sort of font capabilities that you'd have in any of the Adobe tools or really any word processor that you're using. So anyway, so there is a lot that you can do with text. There's a lot of animation that you can do manually or just from scratch. And then there's a lot of presets that you can use. And so what I'm going to introduce to you today are the presets that are available. But before we get into that, I want you to be able to load your own fonts into Adobe After Effects and use those. And So, we're going to be doing a project that involves a lot of text, and the font that you choose is really important because that's going to inform the visual mood and tone of your project. And so there are several free font sites out there. So let me just type in free font sites, do a Google search. There's going to be a list of the 20 greatest from the last year or whatever. You always see these blog posts kind of out there. So you can use all these sources. I have DaFont up, which is number 3 on this list. It's one I like to use, but you know how it is. You just get your sites and you go back to them. And then if you don't find what you need there, you go somewhere else. All right, so here I can search from, all these different types of fonts. I am going to go actually to the horror section because the imagery that I have downloaded for today is going to be sort of a horror looking stuff. I have some like zombie and creepy hallway footage that I'm going to be using a little bit later on in these videos. So I'm going to say that I want to go ahead and use the Night of Terror. So I'm just going to click download there. And what is going to download is usually a zip file. Sometimes they come in an OTF or TTF already, but here I've got my zip file. So I'm just going to uncompress that by opening it up. And then I'm going to double click that and see what I've got. Usually there's a JPEG showing me the fonts and how they look in different ways and other special characters that could be used. So here's my TTFO and an RTF. Okay, don't worry about you're all using this for personal use. Oh my goodness, not commercial. I just took the words personal and commercial and combined those somehow. So yeah, you're not using it commercially because you're using it for educational purposes. So I'm gonna go ahead and load that font on my Mac. And I feel like I have Font Book open. No, I do not. I don't have it down on the dock. Okay, so I'm going to go to my applications, and on a Mac, it's Font Book. I'm going to post instructions to load a font for PC in case you don't know. But if you've done it on your PC, then you probably already know how to do this. So let me see. Font Book. There we go. So I'm just going to go in here. I have my little plus sign up here that I have to load. I'm going to go to my desktop. This is called, what is it called? CF Night of Terror. There it is. So it's only allowing me the TTF. That's what they need. I'm going to open that. All right, perfect. CF Night of Terror. So there's my font. I've got that all loaded up. I should be able to just use it right away. Sometimes you have to save your project, close down the application and restart it, but I don't have to in my case. If you're not seeing your font, it might be because you need to shut down the application. And so in this font, I don't have special, I can't do a question mark or anything. But anyways, so there's your really quick way of getting a font for free out of whatever source you find it to use in your After Effects projects. The other thing that I wanted to point out about fonts is that if you have a subscription to the Adobe Suite, then you have access to fonts at Adobe, which I have found that surprisingly a lot of people don't know about. So you can come to, and I would say this is probably the best resource of like the most contemporary fonts that are kind of being used out in media today. But you can search for fonts with different themes here. You can also go to font packs, which are kind of fun. These are curated by graphic designers, different designers. So you can see fonts for the half pipe, Spark font pack, they have suggestions of what these could be used for. So that's a way to also load fonts from Adobe if that's something you are interested in doing. So very helpful resource here. All right, you do have to log in. So when you go to fontsadobe.com, you can also type in Typekit, Adobe Typekit. That's what it used to be called, or that's what the site used to be. And you do have to sign in, but that's pretty usual. So anyways, great resource. All right, so let's go ahead and check out text presets. So if I go to my effects, which are usually over here in the side panel, effects and presets. If you're not seeing that window, you can just go to effects and presets here. And what I'm going to do is the very first option here is animation presets. I'm going to go ahead and toggle that down, and you're going to see one that is specifically for text. And you are going to see that there are lots of options. There's 3D text, animate in, animate out, blurs, curves, and splines, all kinds of stuff. And so what we want to do is we want to use these, but we don't want to have to go through each one of these and apply them to the text to find out what it is that they do. I could do that, but let's go ahead and just do an animate in so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So pop buzzwords. Well, that sounds really cool. What does it look like? Well, I have to bring this, drag it, and drop it. And then every 15 frames, you can see here that it changes. And I can get in here and I can change things around. You can see there's a lot of keyframes. But I would really much rather, I'm going to just Command Z that. I would really much rather see what these presets do without having to drag and apply everything there. So what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and view these in Adobe Bridge. Okay, so what do we need to do in order to do that? You're going to go to Animation and you're going to browse presets. And what that's going to do is it's going to launch Bridge. So you're just going to wait for that to load. And this will not only show you the text presets, but you should be able to see all the presets in After Effects and what they do. Examples in there. Okay, so here's my Adobe Bridge. There's some new stuff. It looks like I just updated it. Okay, so here we are. This should have you straight to After Effects presets. And then what I want to do is double click on the folder that says text. And then you can see here that I've got all my options, all the options that I can see here in After Effects over on the side. And so then what I can do is if I want to see all the animate in object options, I can just click on them and it's going to show me what each one of these does. Some of these are really obnoxious and are overused. Some of them, the animation is, so you have to be kind of careful with text because sometimes it can have so much animation that it really distracts from what the words are saying. So you kind of want to be careful with that. But you can adjust the length of animation on all of these. So let me go ahead and go back. You can navigate up here, by the way, too. So I was in animate in like this. I can just click back to text here. I'm gonna go to animate out and look at my options. So this raining text is a popular one that people like to choose, but I would say this is one of those examples where it's almost animating too much. And if you're doing something like a title sequences, you want them to have character and you want them to conceptually and thematically work for your visual content that you have. But sometimes they can be over animated too. So you want to be, you want to think about if the animation's actually more distracting. So I'm going to go ahead and choose random fly off. So I'm going to come down, I'm going to go back into After Effects and I'm going to go to animate out and I know that I want to do random fly off. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on to my layer. And if I go to my effect controls window up here, it looks like, it's always going to show up under here. Your effects that are applied are always going to show up down here and up here as well, but it looks like this is just a simple animation control. And so all of these presets, just so you know, they can all be created from scratch in After Effects, and then they're just saved as a preset. So if you ever do something from scratch, an animation, and you want to save that as a preset, you can do that as well. That's all that's being done here. But, you know, it's nice to have native presets because sometimes you don't have the skill set or the time to learn all this, right? So you get these sort of native presets in here. So I can come in and I can change around the keyframes, I can change around settings and play around with it until it's doing exactly what I want it to do. And you can see here it's just moving over a bit. Let's go ahead and I am going to take off, so it's this animator 1. I'm going to go ahead and take off that preset and I'm going to apply a different one. So slide, let's say stretch out each line. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that one on there. And then you can see we've got animator 1 again, and we've got a different sort of looking animation, and we can make adjustments here. And then you can see here there's some kind of advanced settings, so you can come in and play around with these as well. I'm not going to go through all the technical things. I would say for a beginner, it's best to just kind of stick with what is available to you and then, you know, tinker around with that until it's doing what you want it to do. There's tons of options here. So there's a lot of ones that have color presets that do fun stuff like sliding color flicker, you know, wiggly strokes. There's all kinds of presets in here, and you can put more than one preset on your text. So I could do, you know, I could do a couple of different presets on my text. I could do scale up, for example, and colors. So let's just try that really quick. And I also wonder if I can, let me just take this preset off of this text. I wonder if I can just drag and drop that from Bridge. Let's see. No. There is a way to apply this to the project that you're working on. Let me see, what's this? New preset. No, I don't want to do that. There is a way, I'm sure, but I'm just don't use Bridge enough to know that, I guess. But I'm going to go ahead and go to scale. And I'm going to choose scale up on my text layer here. So I'm going to apply that. So I've got my scale up. You can kind of see the ghost of these two keyframes here. If I toggle down, I can get right at them. But so here's my scale up. And then I'm also going to go to, let's see, I can't remember what it was under. What was it called? Fill and stroke. Oh, see, I already forgot what it was called. Fill and stroke. So I can go in, I've got the one preset on there already, and then I can go into fill and stroke, and it was sliding color flicker, I believe. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that on there as well. And then you can see I have the sliding color flicker as well. I can also come in here and make adjustments on when that color is behaving that particular way. It looks like I've got, where are my two keyframes? So here's one. So you can always just sort of toggle down until you get to the keyframes that you're looking for. Range selector, that's where the keyframe is. So you can kind of watch to when this is filling in. So it looks like the color is starting to change after this keyframe. So if I want it to do that a little bit earlier, I can just take this keyframe and move it up a bit, and then I'll start getting that color flicker a little bit earlier. And then it looks like we have some advanced settings down here, and I could probably manipulate the colors that are flickering and all of those sorts of things. But I don't want this to be too long, so I am going to stop here for the text presets and downloading your own font. Hopefully this will get you started and at least find a faster way to understand what it is that those presets are doing and how they animate. And for starters, of course, you can manipulate that as you go forward. Okay, so what I'm going to have you do for this part of the tutorial is whatever it is that you do, just pick two different fonts to download the font. So pick two different ones that you don't have, And go ahead and load those to your computer. And then I want you to apply 2 different text presets. Like I said, these compositions can just be like 5 seconds long. And so what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and export them, add them to render queue, go ahead and export them into whatever folder you have set up for this week's tutorial. Like I said, you're going to be doing your own assets for this one, so you don't have a folder of already downloaded stuff. So I'll just say text and transitions for this week, okay? So we're going to create that folder, and then you call them whatever you want to call them, and then export all those. You're going to stitch everything together at the end. I'll go over that in the last video, and you're going to turn that video in for credit for this week's tutorial. Okay. All right, well, that's the end of this video. Bye.